You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
All right, Mike, here we are, another episode of Hard Foul. 1 week exactly until the start of the NBA season. The Celtics have gotten off to, is it 4-0 now? Yeah, it's 4-0 start in the preseason here in the NBA, and they are shooting lights out. It seems like everyone, including Jordan Walsh, is a knockdown three-point shooter on this team right now. What are your takeaways from preseason, and what have you seen that you actually think could carry in to the regular season that maybe wasn't on your radar a couple weeks ago? And good morning, Mike, by the way.
Yeah, I think, well, for starters, looks like Jordan Walsh might be earning himself the O'Shea Brissett minutes, which isn't a huge role, but it means he'll get some playing time this year. So good for him. And then I think it was on my radar, but whether or not he could do it was the question. Is could Xavier Tillman establish himself as a reliable three-point shooter? And maybe he has. And if he has, that's a big deal for him and for the team. So there's some really nice things there that we're seeing. And obviously Luke Kennett and Gata have played well in their role, getting minutes at the center position, which may give Mazzulla some confidence on the amount that he can sit out Al Horford this year and kind of manage his minutes with KP out and let these guys play, because it looks like they're capable and that they can win with these guys at center. So it's been all good. It's been all good news, Jim.
Yeah, no, the center depth looks really pretty good. You know, it looks like, KP can take as much time as he needs. You're right about Tillman, and, you watch, it isn't just the shot going in, you kind of watch his form. His release is slow. It's not like you have a KP release or anything like that. It's more along the line of kind of a Horford kind of release, but it looks good. And he's shooting with confidence. And if he can add that to his game as a consistent threat, I'm not even going to use the term weapon because I don't think it'll ever be a weapon for him. But as long as it's a threat, it will boost his value across the league, and it will also, help this team. And the one thing he can give you, Mike, as we saw last year in the playoffs, is that just that defensive versatility. He can cover a big like Embiid. He can cover a big like Jokic, as we saw in the first two preseason games, or he can, get out and switch on smaller guards or wings with success, as we saw in the finals against Kyrie and Luka. It's not sustainable on every possession, but he can give you enough there where it's, I think when they made this trade, they were hoping to get kind of a poor man's Al Horford. And you can see that. I mean, never mind, he looks like his older brother. He's 10 years younger than Al, and he looks like he's his older brother. But he looks like he can fit the part. And you wonder, he's on a 2-year deal. And this is looking way down the line. And Horford's deal, what it is. If they see him as part of their future plans, especially if they can keep him on a somewhat reasonable contract going forward. But obviously, that's kind of way down the line right now. Yeah, Jordan Walsh, he is kind of, so that's the one, if you want to talk about a surprise, that's the one guy that has surprised me. I didn't think he looked that great in Summer League, which you kind of worry about because the level of competition there's such a huge gap between that and the NBA. But, so far, his shot looks much, much improved. You're seeing his athletic ability with his ability to get to the hoop and his penchant to get offensive rebounds. He definitely has defensive versatility, and he's just another long wing that they can have under control for cheap money. So if he can step into that O'Shea Brissett role, like you mentioned, that's, really helpful. and gives them some depth, especially on days, there'll be games this year where Tatum and Brown I'm not going to dress for whatever reason. So for
Yeah,
him to kind of step in and give them NBA replacement minutes, I think is a nice thing. And then the last thing, and this is kind of still an interesting decision for the Celtics.
Lonnie Walker.
Yeah, exactly. The guy looks like a
has
bucket.
to make the team.
He looks like a bucket. Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason for him not to make the team. To get a guy with a shot like that, plays that hard, that costs no money. He has to make the team. Somebody else is going to go. It's it's no brainer.
There's room on the roster for him where they wouldn't have to cut any of the core guys, because there's their extra roster spot, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just a matter of like finding them minutes in the season.
That might be tough.
Yeah, and as long as he has an understanding that it's going to be tough, but you do have now that flexibility where maybe you can give Holiday some time off from game, maybe on back-to-backs, or things like that, and you won't miss a beat. Well, you'll miss a beat, but during the regular season, you'll be okay with having him, White, and Pritchard as kind of your main backcourt, and it might alleviate some stress and minutes on White and Holiday. Knowing that you got a guy like this that can, certainly score the way he can, and he's a pretty good defender. It's not like he's a huge drop off on the defensive end. He's always been known as a pretty good defender. So I think you're watching him out there. The guy, he looks like a microwave oven off the bench. You just feel like he's going to make this team at this point. He's not. It's not a situation like in the first preseason game where he was playing with the third unit. He kind of has him out. Mazzulla kind of has him out there pretty steady with the second unit, and him and Pritchard in the backcourt together. He's in there before Springer, as of right now. So I do think he'll probably be on the team, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's a better player than Springer.
He sure is.
And he's proven it. And back to Jordan Walsh, I'll just say this too. Brissett played minutes in the playoffs last year. So as much as he won't play, there's going to be moments where if he steps into that role, they need somebody in that role. So it's a good opportunity for him. I think that he's earned it with the way he's played in this preseason. And it's not just his 3-point shooting, his ability to get to the hoop. Taking guys off the dribble and driving to the basket is something that surprised me too. Because I don't know if he was doing that in Portland, so maybe that's normal for him, but it's certainly not what we saw in Summer League. And another guy who probably won't make the team, but I think he's outplayed Springer, is Peterson.
Well, he's on a two-way.
He's on a two-way.
Yeah. So he'll be around.
But, if there was a way to move Springer, I think this kid's better. So they've definitely developed some of these players, man, as offensive threats. It's pretty impressive to see what they've done with these guys.
Well, the contract kind of works out the way it is right now for Peterson. There's no rush to move him up. He's not going to play anyway, so keep him on the two-way. Not like someone can pluck him from your roster. Springer provides you depth at a position that you probably have the least amount of depth at. So I think, they're probably content with the way it looks right now. But no, their player development, Mike, something's going right there, both in Maine and then when they come up here. This is obviously an extraordinarily small sample size, but you see the improvement in Tillman's shot. And, obviously that didn't improve much over his stay in Memphis. And then you've seen what they've done with Luke Cornett and Kada as big guys. You see in Sam Hauser, small sample size with Jordan Walsh. We'll see if this is sustained. And then even a guy like Peterson, there is some hope when they get some of these guys with raw abilities in here, and if they have time to develop them in their system, that they can become pretty good players. And the other thing that's kind of extraordinary is not the right word, but nice or refreshing is they've been able to hold on to these guys. So like Cornette was a free agent, certainly a rotation player. He's going to be a starter on a championship, favorite to start the season. They got him
He
for
needs to
next to
fire
nothing on
his,
a minimum deal.
he needs to
Tillman,
fire his agent. I've been saying that all since the beginning of the offseason. Why the hell did he sign that
I
early
don't,
with the Celtics?
I don't know. I don't know if they were no offers or if he just didn't want to leave, or maybe there's a combination of factors. And even with Tillman too, Tillman is another guy that somehow they got to stay on a minimum deal. A guy who's been a starter in this league and on a contender and is going to be a rotation player. So they've been able to hold on to these guys and keep them in their system. Houser's another one,
Well, they
which
paid
is,
Hauser.
yeah, they paid Hauser. So it's really, doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you build up a guy's value and they're gone pretty quick.
Yeah, well,
And
I'll say this.
someone else reaps the benefits.
You're right, Jim, and their development's going to be put to the test a little bit here with this draft class because these guys, I think, are a little too slow for the NBA. Watson's kind of a turnstile on defense. Really, no footwork on that guy at all. Just watching him against like Toronto's third unit, he can't defend anybody for a guy who's only 6'8". And then with Shireman, I feel like he's the type of guy who was used to having the ball a lot in college, probably his whole career.
Yeah.
And he's going to really struggle to play off the ball. I don't know if he's going to make it here. I would assume he's going to spend the whole season down in Maine.
Yeah.
But he's got a little bit of Adam Morrison to him. I don't know, man. I know it's a really early sample size, but I don't know about these two.
Well, it's a really early sample size on both of them. I think they both have the body type, which is kind of key. I think if we were looking at Jordan Walsh last year, we'd probably be saying the same thing. I think Shireman has a lot more skills than Walsh had coming into this league. He's certainly, built like an NBA player. And you see some things out there that, they just seems to be a step off, but are in the right direction. I thought there was a good play on his behalf. Yes, was it yesterday or the day before, where he was able to catch the ball out on the in the corner. Defense closed out on him pretty well. Dribble drived and put a floater up that you could just tell the touch wasn't there yet.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see things are just like not quite NBA ready, but there's things that he has the ability to do athletically that a lot of guys don't. So go down to Maine. He'll have the ball in his hands a ton down there. He can work on those things. And then you kind of go to the next step of playing off the ball. As far as Watson, I mean, who knows? Second round pick.
Yeah.
Certainly, built like a brick shit house. And we've seen guys develop in the Celtic system with, less raw ability than he has. So let's just see. I think one thing we've kind of learned from this team and what their player development and, the value system and everything else is you got to give them the benefit of the doubt that they know talent and they know how to build it up. I mean, outside of Romeo Langford, who I think just loved marijuana more than he loved basketball.
Is that a real thing?
They haven't missed on a lot of guys.
That's a real thing?
What's that?
Romeo Langford had an issue with marijuana?
I don't know. Just judging from some of the pictures where he wasn't playing, that's me being kind of a jackass. So I don't know if that's a real thing.
I don't want to get into the weeds of this. I think that last two-way spot they want to reconsider too. I think they're probably better off developing another big rather than giving J.D. Davidson a third year on a two-way. That just doesn't make sense to me. At this point, you know what he is. I don't see why he needs a roster spot to play in Maine again. This big white guy that you have, why not just put him on your two-way and start developing him? It kind of seems, or like make a decision. Is it J.D. Davidson you want on your NBA roster or Springer? Because it's really, to me, there's no point in having this kid down, taking up the two-way spot again. So either he's on your NBA roster or I'd say he's gone. That's how I would handle it.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't think they're going to cut him. I think this would probably be his last season here. I think they kind of look at it as maybe a depth issue within the system. They have a lot of pretty good depth with their bigs and with their wings. Probably not as much depth with pure point guards. Um, I wouldn't call Lonnie Walker a point guard. Not even Jordan Springer.
I wouldn't call JD Davidson one.
Well, he's probably more of a pure point guard than the other guys.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's what it is if they need to get through 5, 6 games in March. They probably say he won't kill them. And I think that's probably how this team is thinking right now. Instead of having to sign someone off the street that would add more to your tax, you have someone on a two-way that can kind of step up and fill that role. But perhaps you're right. Perhaps they should be developing a big. I do love the fact that they just keep developing wings with those two-way positions, though. You see it with Peterson. Who knows if there's a future with the Celtics. Obviously, they're trying it with Watson, Jordan Walsh, Hauser. It's the toughest position to find guys, and it's the most valuable position in the league. And I think to continue to draft those guys at the end of the draft or in the second round and say, all right, go down to Maine, let's see what happens. Plucking guys off the street, on a rookie free agent deal, send them to Maine and see what happens. It's really good business. And they seem to have done pretty well with it, thus far, and hopefully that continues. They're reaping the benefits on the big league roster, though, as we've seen with Hauser. And I think you're right. I think Walsh is going to be part of the rotation in that Brissett role going forward. I think Walsh is probably a little more skilled offensively than Brissett ever was last year too. So that's pretty interesting as well. Any other takeaways from you going into the season?
No, I mean, they look good. The starters have looked good in the 3 games they played. Tatum and Brown obviously look like they're ready to go. So we'll see what they do with the center position. Is Al going to come off the bench? They're going to continue to let Cornette start. I don't think it matters too much, but I guess that really depends on Al. If Al wants to start, then they'll start him. If he's okay coming off the bench and Cornette seems to thrive starting, then that's what they'll do. But they look ready to go, man. I think they're the best team in the NBA and that they're going to win it again. If they stay healthy, I just have a really hard time seeing anybody beating this team in the 7-game series.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right with what Al wants to do. I think he'll most likely start at least that first game just because he matches up probably a lot better on Cat than Cornette would. So I tend to think we'll probably see Al, and they'll ease him in. I mean, he isn't going to have any preseason minutes, so I can't see him.
He might play this last game.
Yeah, he might, because I can't really see him playing more than 20, 25 minutes in that first game, considering he has not gotten any run. The other thing, Mike, my takeaway, and again, it's just the preseason, but they seem pretty locked in already to start the year. They seem like they're ready to go. You see glimpses of their practices where Mazzulla has them going really hard, also doing some team bonding stuff. They really do seem to buy in to what Mazzulla is selling. The communication between the coach and players, particularly his core group, seems to be about as good as you're going to get in the NBA. So credit to Mazzulla for, having his guys buy into what he wants to do. That was evident, obviously, all throughout the playoffs last year, and I want to kind of segue, Mike. I went back and because I'm a geek and I've watched some like close endings of Celtics games over on YouTube from last season. And he would just do things that you typically, they just seem like simple and logical, but you don't see. A great example of, two great examples. One obvious one is when you're up, you know, 5 or 6 and you foul to keep it out of, them hitting a three with, under a minute to go or under 30 seconds to go. So, they can't make it a one possession game on you. You're up 6, you foul, the most you can be, the worst case scenario is you're up 4. The other thing is that I really found interesting that he would do consistently is when they were up, let's say, late in the game and, a team needed to miss on purpose and get the offensive rebound. So say it was, they're down 2 with 4 seconds to go and they got one foul shot left. So, they have to miss. He would put in his big, and then he would have his, like Cornette go to the second block, not the low block, because he knew that high bounce from the miss would most likely go over the top of the first couple guys and have, his guy right there would just have to kind of slap it back and the clock would run out. And it was just so smart, because obviously the ball is going to come off the rim hard and for him to tip it back. So the attention to detail in kind of key game end of game situations, end of quarter situations, he really does an excellent job there. And I'm really kind of disappointed in myself for not picking up on it during the season last year as much as I should have. And maybe part of it is the Celtics blew out so many teams that, there weren't as many situations to kind of watch for that. But he is on top of those moments and knows exactly what buttons to push to get the job done. And certainly this team in the playoffs was a lot better in the last 2 minutes than they were at any point over the last, I want to say 7-8 years. They were really, really good in crunch time. So just interesting. Obviously, those are things they go over a ton in practice, and he deserves a lot of credit for that.
He does. He does. 2 years ago, we were really getting on him for stuff like that. And I think it was hard for him to focus probably on.
Mike, you're breaking up. I think you're probably
these guys to listen to him. And
yeah,
what?
Mike, we lost you. Are you still there? I think you're trying to say it was probably hard for him to kind of come in as a new coach and get these guys to buy in.
During his first season, especially with, he had a guy like Marcus Smart on the roster too, who's taken up a lot of that room in the locker room, and guys who are really dedicated and committed to Ime. And he came into the second season and really turned it around as far as how he handled end of the game situations. I think we've seen some of it too during this documentary on Netflix. You get little glimpses of it where he's talking to Jason Tatum at the end of games, telling him what his options are and what he can do.
Don't mean to interrupt. It's the Jason Tatum documentary you're talking about, right?
The five.
Starting five. Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, the game against Minnesota at home, Tatum ultimately misses the shot, but you get to see the communication between him and Coach Mazzulla prior to that possession. You also see the way he communicates with his superstars a little bit in that series too, where Tatum had a really rough first half on the Christmas Day game against the Lakers. And you see Mazzulla kind of talking to him about some of the stuff that he's doing, talking to him about his spin move and how he's kind of avoiding contact. And him and Tatum have a really interesting back and forth where Tatum really adjusts what he's doing in the second half of that game. And I'm not going to pretend like I remember the Christmas Day game, but apparently he had a great second half against the Lakers. And so it's just good to see. And then the way he talks about Tatum too, like Tatum was giving an interview, every day I have to listen to the stuff they're saying about me in the media. And when they talk to Coach Mazzulla about it, he goes, yeah, he gets to have that privilege because he's earned the right to be this good.
Yeah.
He just has these ways of communicating with the guys that really seems to work.
Yeah, and sees the world in a way that benefits his team, right? We'll see like a negative and turn it into a positive, find a way to motivate them. I also, on that kind of vein, I read that he went out to Paris when Tatum wasn't playing to kind of, check in on his player and probably keep him motivated and saying and doing the right things. And
he flew out to Paris during the Olympics?
yeah, so to me that just shows a guy that's completely all the way, bought in and doing
Does he
everything
not have
needs
kids
to
yet?
do.
He
He
must
does.
not have kids. Oh, wow.
Yeah, he does.
He's got a good wife at home.
He's also got $1 million contract, so
Yeah,
he's got a
that's
little
true,
help
too.
there as well.
Yeah.
So and maybe he brought his son with him to Paris,
Hey, maybe
I'm
he did
sure he
that
did.
too.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure he did
yeah.
for the Olympics. Mike, around the league last night, I didn't see the play. You brought it up to me this morning, and I've just read it about a little bit. Apparently, Paul George hyperextended his knee. He's saying he's not worried about it. I think anytime a guy like Paul George or Joel Embiid hurts something, you should be worried about it, in spite of what they may say in the locker room after the game. But this is kind of goes to, what the Sixers' number one concern is just their guys getting through a season and being healthy when the games matter most. So they're already kind of starting off on eggshells a little bit over there, waiting to see what, this means for Paul George.
Hey, this is a 34-year-old guy with a ton of talent, but a lot of injuries in his career. They got to be real careful with him. Obviously, their plan is to not play him on back-to-backs, which is probably a good idea. But I have zero faith that these two are going to be available at full strength come playoff time. I don't care what they do with Embiid. I have to see that he's in shape when the playoffs hit.
Yeah.
For me to believe that he's actually going to do it. With Paul George, I don't think it's an in shape thing. This guy broke his leg, right, playing for Team USA. Then he had that horrible injury way back in the day.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so obviously that is, I think, as good as he's played since then, I think he could have had a much better career if that injury had never happened. With the amount of talent that guy has, I think that injury has really held him back. And I don't see how that doesn't continue this season. I think he's at risk of missing a lot of games all the time. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's tough, before the season even gets started, you got to deal with this. They do have okay depth at that position to kind of get them through the regular season for sure, with Kelly Oubre and Caleb Martin over there. So they'll be okay. But, it goes to the larger problem of just, how consistently can they be healthy? And it goes to the roster construction too, right? This was a move they felt like they had to make to try to contend for a championship. But you have two guys that you're paying the most, your two highest paid players, neither one can play back-to-backs, which really just shows how fragile you are. And probably isn't the best way to build a championship team. Maybe it works out, but you probably want to do it another way. As you look at the Celtics, their two highest paid players, they just don't really miss games, and they're available all the time. So it's what Philly had to do, and maybe it works out for them in the end. I don't really think it will, because as you said, it's tough to trust either one of these guys to be there and healthy. But this is what they're going to have to deal with throughout their time there and starting right away. So he's on a 4-year, $212 million deal at 34 years old. So if the contract doesn't look good this season, it's going to be interesting going forward.
Yeah.
Mike, any other takeaways from the preseason? I know there were the Knicks Dante DiVincenzo kind of spat, non-spat, or whatever the hell that was with the Timberwolves. I don't really care about that if you want to talk about it or
that guy.
anything
I don't
else
know.
that's going
I don't
on.
know what it was about, but I like him, man. I think Minnesota's going to love him.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you not lie? I mean, he's got a little bit of Marcus Smart in him on offense, so he just fires up those threes, and I don't know if they're the best shots, but
Better shooter, anyways.
he's a better shooter. That's what I was going to bring up is Marcus Smart. I don't think he is going to survive the full season in Memphis, and I'm interested to see where he ends up for his career. Maybe he ends up in a better spot where he has a better fit. Certainly a team like San Antonio could use Marcus Smart. We've heard the Knicks are interested in him, so I think there's always guys who get moved, and I think he's going to be one of the guys that get moved this year.
Yeah, I could see it. I think a lot of it depends on how Memphis does. If it's working well with him and Moran and they're winning games and they got a chance to contend, probably not. If they think they can better themselves to be a better team, then maybe they move on for him. He'll be an interesting guy. Well, last year was a lost season for him, so obviously I'll always be rooting for Marcus Smart, just as long as he doesn't go to a place like Philadelphia, the Knicks, or the Heat.
Well, if he goes there, I hope he plays well, except when he plays against us.
Yeah. Or in any big playoff game, because I'll never root for those guys. Outside of that, Mike, we're waiting for this thing to start. A week from today, the season gets kicked off. It's going to be banner night, the rings, all that cool stuff. A lot of fun. You wonder how that impacts the game, if the team is going to be a little bit emotionally spent before they even tip off, and how that affects the way they play. Who knows? Either way, I'm not going to be too worried about it, whatever the performance looks like. But we'll preview banner night in the New York Knicks, either Friday or Monday, to tip off the season. And they got one more left against Toronto, and then we're ready to go. We're ready to go and defend this title.
Thank God we're ready to go.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank God.
I think so too. So unless you have any closing thoughts, we'll close this thing out.
All right.
All right.
Luke,
Talk to.
all right. Later.